Against a covering opponent, Thomas Almeida is a buzzsaw. His spins and jumps and finishes won him a great many fans when he debuted in the UFC as an undefeated prospect. But a great deal of Almeida's game comes down to the good old inside slip. Almeida moves in on his man and, when they try to jab to keep him off, he slips to the inside of the punch. This is almost always combined with a right hand across the top of the jab, the classic cross counter. The name comes from the fact that the right hand is crossing the opponent's jab. For a very long time in boxing, you either had a great jab, or you better have a good inside slip and cross counter. Of course, if the opponent throws their right hand, you're just as likely to slip that and hit them too. The cross counter has scored a lot of knockouts on its own, but it is just as likely to knock the opponent out of their stance even if it hits their shoulder, allowing for a follow-up as Vicente Luque often does. But the most important thing about the cross counter is that it carries the fighter to the inside, where he can continue hitting. Almeida uses the inside slip in a number of ways. Sometimes he throws a right elbow across the top instead of the cross counter, something similar to what Nate Corbett used to do in Muay Thai. Other times he will slip inside and shoot the right straight to the body. The effect of all these inside slip counters, however, is to get Almeida to infighting range, where his liver shots, uppercuts and knees are ferocious. But there are two big issues that Almeida has faced that make this O'Malley fight look like a bit of nasty matchmaking. The first is that Almeida has trouble with good feinters and non-committal straight hitters. The inside slip and cross counter are at their best when the opponent really puts some force on the jab, or even steps into it. Almeida was left swinging at air a lot of the time when Rob Font and Jonathan Martinez flicked at him cautiously from the end of their reach. Almeida's answer against Font was to try and move his head more, which led to Font catching him deep in a lean and putting him on his behind. Rob Font also had good success putting Almeida against the fence to take away his kicking game and control over the range. With a stationary target, Font tried to force slips and punish Almeida with uppercuts, knees and head kicks. The second big issue Almeida has had is trouble with southpaws. His fight with Jonathan Martinez was a competitive bout, but Almeida looked nowhere near as comfortable closing the distance. As we discussed in our Gavin Tucker guide, when two orthodox fighters come together, their lead legs can just slide past each other until they come chest to chest. In a southpaw versus orthodox matchup, each man's lead foot is where the other man's lead foot wants to be. The asymmetrical footing makes a true infighting position much harder to achieve in an open guard matchup, unless the other man agrees to it. The rear leg front kick was also a constant annoyance from Martinez, physically stopping Almeida from closing. Furthermore, Almeida has always had trouble being sideswiped with the left hand. Normally the cross counter shells his man up and he can follow up without much trouble. But when the left hook comes back, Almeida is often simply there for it. Many southpaws drop back to their left side, specifically to force the opponent to overcommit to their right hand. Then the southpaw will fire his own left hand across the top of it. This open side counter gave Almeida a lot of trouble against Martinez. All of that seems a bit ominous when you consider that O'Malley is a southpaw who switch hits, pressures opponents with feints, and drops away and scores great counters when his opponents try and clap back at him. That isn't to say that Almeida is a dead duck here though. He showed himself willing to try a bit of switch hitting against Martinez, and switch hitting against a switch hitter can make an ugly and chaotic fight, the exact sort of thing that Almeida wants. Marlon Vera was able to do this against O'Malley. Not to mention Almeida's razor-sharp step-up lead leg low kick. A very valuable asset to have against perhaps the only fighter I have ever seen accused of having glass ankles. Sean O'Malley and Thomas Almeida meet at UFC 260 this weekend, and it promises to be some kind of glorious car crash whichever way it goes. I make these videos for fun and they aren't monetized, but if you want to hear my thoughts on the event in more detail, check out my podcast, read my articles at fightprimer.com, or check out my shitposts on Twitter. Cheers!